Gordon? Gotcha. Alrighty. Howdy, folks. It is your one and only favorite president, Grant Smith, and I'm joined here tonight with.
I was expecting you to do my intro. Hi, everybody. I'm Christian Pena. I'm the Vice President of Programs. And today we're going to be talking about digital marketing and SEO. Awesome. So, just to kind of get into it, uh, what is SEO? SEO stands for Search Engine Optimization, and it focuses in two areas. So we want to figure out like how are people using search engines and how they're retrieving information as well as how it's being portrayed to people. So if for instance if we want to make ads to reach to people, like then you would focus on ads, but what you would want to use SEO for is to reach the other percentage of people that ignore the ads and typically click on the results that Google is offering them. So um, just to get into the agenda right after here. Awesome. So here's some of the topics that we're going to be talking about. So what is SEO, which was the last slide. I'm going to give you somewhat of an intro. How search engines work, keyword research. Then Grant is going to take over for the next half. He's going to talk about on-site optimization, off-site optimization, and I promise this stuff is going to make sense when we get there. Metrics and performance, and then as well, it wouldn't be a workshop if we didn't give you any tools and resources for you to learn more. Awesome. So, what is SEO? So, we have to learn about the engine itself. For the sake of this presentation, we're mainly going to be talking about Google because, as you can see, 92% of users use Google as opposed to Bing, Yahoo, Baidu, Yandex, and any of the other ones. However, if you are working as an SEO marketing agent or anything like that, it may be important to learn how some of these other ones work, especially if you there are opportunities for you to be number one on some of these other search engines, but each of them have their own algorithms, their own display, their features, and but again, for the most part, for this presentation, we'll mainly be talking about Google. So the thing that I want to put an emphasis on is, despite the acronym, SEO is about people as much as it is about the search engines themselves. So as you're learning about this, you might be thinking about ways about hacking the system and trying to find a way to rank and whatnot. But at the end of the day, the search engines are trying to do the same thing that you're trying to do. They're trying to present users the most relevant information. So when you start thinking about strategies and dissecting keywords and whatnot, you want to think about the user first and then the search engine second. So moving forward, I wanted to go over some of the basic terms that you'll probably hear throughout. So there will be more scattered around, but this is just kind of get us started. So organic is earned placements in search results. So this is when you go to Google, type in a query, and it gives you the results. The stuff that are not advertisement, those are called organic placements. Ranking is the ordering in which search results are presented on Google. So if I say I rank number one for Supreme sneakers, that means when you type that into Google, my listing or my website will be the first thing that you should see on the organic list. As well, traffic is how many visits you get to a website, and KPI are key performance indicators. So Grant will touch on KPIs later on, but it's important to figure out like what it is that you're trying to test, measure, and assess. And that again, you think about the user first, then you think about how you want to measure that. So moving on. So as you can see, we kind of covered what is SEO. We're now about to get into how search engines work. So again, the main focus is we're gonna only talk about Google for this presentation. And the first principle is if your site can't be found, there's no way you'll show up on a search engine result page. So your content has to first be visible for search engines. So you can't have a draft or something that's just not published. It has to be ready to go and out there. This is done and making it available is done by embedding special piece of code onto your website and verifying your page with Google. Once this is done, Google begins to work to understand your page's content, layout, links, and add it to their database. And this is done through crawling, indexing, and ranking. So crawling is scouring the internet for content, looking for the code and everything for each URL that they find. So think about UCF's website. UCF has their main page, then they kind of break up into colleges, then there's resources and everything there. There's the website even breaks out. There's a section of it just for the faculty. So what you do is once you register your website with Google and you have the code and everything on there, Google will release something that are called spiders, which is kind of interesting, right? And the spiders start by fetching a few web pages, then they follow the links on those web pages to find the new URL. The way that my brain thinks about it is like a long time ago, before there was Google Maps or even physical maps, somebody had to be on a boat trying to figure out how close these masses of lands are next to each other. So that's essentially what they're doing. They're mapping out your website and they're trying to figure out the flow of content and where else they lead to. So indexing is the second part of this. Once these robots navigate through your website and determine the mapping of all your pages, then they do something called indexing, and that's storing and organizing the content found during crawling. And Google's indexing database, its name is Caffeine, and it's just a very smart algorithm that begins to organize not just your website in terms of information, but other people's websites. So again, thinking about the user in mind, when somebody types in something into Google, Caffeine then goes, and now that they know what your website is about, they can then present relevant information to the user. And if what the person is searching for and the content that you have, if they match up, then you now have organic reach. And lastly here is ranking. So again, a query is the words that are typed into the search bar. Ranking are the results on the search engine. And to determine relevance, search engines use algorithms. So something that you might hear are SERPs, which just means search engine results page. But also another thing you also might hear are 10 blue links. And those are the 10 blue links that you see on Google. Typically, those are all organic. If it was an ad, sometimes it'll say ad next to it. Sometimes you'll see pictures, and it all depends on the information that you're searching for. Because if I look for pizza shop, I might get something with a map on the side, and certain people can pay to show up on those results. But for the sake of what we're talking right now, we're talking mainly about organic reach. So that is ranking. So then now we're going to talk about keyword research. Awesome. So keyword research provides you with specific search data that can help you answer questions. So if you're a business and you are trying to appeal to certain consumers or people on the internet, you want to start thinking as if you were looking for the information that you provide, right? So what are people searching for? How many people are searching for it? And in what format do they want that information? So if I'm looking for like pizzas near me, I'd rather see uh a map of locations close by with reviews as opposed to a blog post with a list of somebody's favorite pizza locations. So understanding how your users are searching for information will then allow you to do the best keyword research, and you'll be able to strategize a better plan. So keyword research. Essentially, Google is trying to provide the user the most relevant information. And in order to maximize the relevance, you have to consider essentially the who, what, where, when, why, and how people are searching. Then consider how you can provide them the best content. So it's just like a product, right? Products are meant to solve an issue. If you know that there are people out there that are searching for something that your business or your client's business can provide a solution for, then you need to understand the consumer behavior in terms of like the research process and how they might want that information presented to them. So there are, I think of this next slide right here, I have an example. So imagine your client is the owner of a landscaping business that they make six figures per year, right? So they're a very successful landscaping business. Aside from the actual landscaping part itself, they also provide consulting services to other landscaping businesses. They would and they hire you because they want you to help them reach more clients, right? So what you might do is then go to a search engine research tool like I have on the next slide and just start off by searching landscaping, right? Now the word landscaping is completely general. And you might not really get the best results, but you'll start to get an idea of what people are searching in terms of landscaping. So in this case, I use Moz's keyword research tool. From here, you can begin to find keywords or phrases that people are typing into search engines around that industry, product, or service. Understanding these keywords being researched will give you context to what to focus your content on. One of the columns on here, as you see, is monthly volume, and that is how many visitors each keyword generates. The higher the search volume for a keyword, the more work is required to achieve higher rankings. So, for instance, the word landscaping in general, you're competing with millions of people that are trying to rank for that word. There's too much competition, and then at the same time, is also too broad and not specific for the content that you might be trying to generate, right? So in this case, you're helping somebody with a consulting service. But as you can see, like some people might be searching for landscaping jobs. Some people are looking for landscaping ideas. Some people might be interested for photos, business ideas and whatnot. So they might be too generic of results. But as you go down this process, you'll begin to realize other things. In the next slide, I typed in how to start a landscaping business in Florida. And here you'll get like a bunch of other results, and you can realize that you'll see that aside from the word landscaping, you'll find out that other people use lawn care instead of landscaping. So now that you're doing this research, you're finding out what words people are using um, to search for information. You, as a content creator, can now focus on these keywords. When you're making a blog post, you might want to use the word lawn care and landscaping, maybe in the same blog post, instead of just using the one word each time. You may want to use words like legally or from scratch for people that are curious about starting their own business. If you only focus on landscaping, you would be missing a bunch of other people that are searching for the same exact thing, just with other related terms. That being said, on this next slide, I have what's called the long tail. So on the bottom axis, you'll see number of keywords, and on the top you'll see number of monthly searches. So words like landscaping will be on the left side of this curve because they generate a lot of information. A lot of monthly visitors and whatnot, and typically your top 100 keywords will be there. There's a lot of people searching with those words, but at the same time, you have to remember that those are much harder to rank for. On the opposite side of the curve, on like the dark pink side, you'll see what's called the long tail. So these are 70% of what you'll find, like when you do keyword research. This is like the other 70%. These are the items that don't have as much hits on Google, as much they don't generate as much volume. However, if you create a content strategy around this, then you might be able to generate more business, right? So an example that I have here is a person searching for shoes is probably browsing. So it makes no sense as a shoe vendor for you to try to rank for shoes if somebody's browsing. However, somebody searching for best priced Reds women's size 7 running shoe practically has their wallet out. They're ready to buy something. So if you rank for that instead of the word shoes, there might be more opportunities for you to generate more money. At the end of the day, would you rather a million people walk into your store and one person buy something, or 100 people walk into your store and maybe 30 people buy something? So it's all about creating that strategy around specific words to help, you know, it all depended on your goals, right? But in this case, it would be sales, to help generate sales. Awesome. So at this point, I'll hand it over to Grant and he'll begin talking about on-site optimization.
Awesome. Thank you, Christian. So the way that I kind of like to think about it is on-site is more so what you own, like it's kind of a piece of owned media versus paid media. Off-site isn't really paid in a sense, but we'll kind of get more into that information. But on-site is essentially trying to taking the content that you have and trying to optimize it where it's really going to help you rank the most. As Christian talked about, like web crawling, it's looking at the page that you have and making sure that it's meeting all the specific criteria that the algorithm looks for. And a lot of this has to deal with the HTML that's used on your website. So that's a little bit of the coding that is used. And you want to make sure that the keywords that you use are kind of relevant to like the URL, the title tags, the header tags, main content, and an image alternative text, as well as anchor text as well. And we're going to go into a few examples here. So if you go onto any web page and you right click and inspect, you'd be able to get a little bit more information on the HTML elements that are used. But here's a bit more specific examples. Let's say I'm trying to find a job. And here, the URL that's being used is this highlighted section with the glassdoor.com/blog/guide/how to search for a job. Like that's kind of another example of that crawling where you can see that it's almost a trail of where it's going to. So that's an example of more of the URL that's being used. But what shows up on this Google search results page is the title tag, which right here in the purple is how to search for a job. So when you're searching for when you're trying to rank for certain keywords, it's important that the title that you use kind of matches both the URL as well as the title that you use, and that you include meta text as well. And the meta text is the information, I believe it's, let's say up to 150 characters, it might be more or less there, that you can include underneath your title tag. So here they say, wondering where to look for jobs, you've come to the right place. This guide will show you where, how, and when to apply for jobs, apply to jobs for maximum success. So it's really trying to entice people to click on that link if they're reading it, and it will help you also increase your chances of ranking higher on the search engine results page. So like I said, if you go into and like if you right click and inspect on a page, you're able to see all of the HTML, CSS, and JavaScript elements that are used on certain web pages. It's really interesting in the sense that the web was kind of built with the idea that people would have access to this information. So if you're ever trying to create a web page from scratch, or if you're using WordPress, you're able to look at other web pages for inspiration, and you can almost even borrow some of those elements to kind of help create your own web page. But to give more specific examples here, so with H1 and H2, those essentially means header 1 and header 2. So for instance, the H1 tag here would be how to search for a job, and the H2 tag might be a guide for finding and landing the job of your dreams. So here they're kind of they're still using those keyword of job. They're using like synonyms for it for search and landing, so that way they're trying to rank higher. But you can see here in the HTML elements that also lines up as well. And then as I think it's on the next slide here. Yep, for main content and text. So the main content is the blog content that you might have on your page. It's where search engines are really going to look for. At the same time, you can't include like the same keyword over and over again, hoping that it would like help your search engine, or hoping that you're kind of going to trick Google into thinking that your page is going to show up. If I put job like 1,000 times on a search engine or on a web page, like Google will be able to easily say, hey, you're just trying to rank a lot higher on this page. It's not really relevant content to people. They're always trying to look at what's really going to be valuable for the end user. So with that, again, looking at the HTML elements, you can see that in this span class that it has a lot more of the main content that's being used, whether you're never searched for a job before, it goes into that and using specific keywords. You also have the alt text. Now this is extremely important for marketers to think about into the future. So alt text is something we have around, I'd like to say, I think it's around 825 million individuals who are visually impaired. It's important to create content, especially when it comes to web design, that's still able for individuals to read and be able to view that content. So if they're using a screen reader or any other format, it's important to include alt text. And even on social media, if you're provided the opportunity, more social media pages are now allowing the opportunity to provide alt text, like Instagram, that's very image heavy, as well as Twitter. So it's very important to provide alt text for your users, and it will help you rank higher as well. So it is nice on that marketing side. So that's a little bit more on on-site optimization on what you can control when you're creating web pages. Now on to off-site SEO. That's pretty much the creation and dissemination of content, helping build quality links and pretty much trying to disseminate those links to other individuals to kind of help with your brand getting more exposure in a sense. So in terms of link building, there are three main types of it, but overall it's the process of acquiring hyperlinks and trying to build that from your website to others. So there's three main types: editorial being provided by other website for the content. So this is something where other people are trying to click on more manually. It's direct. This is content that you're creating or that you're creating in collaboration, and that people are going to be interacting with the most. Manual links, those are earned through direct effort. So that might be something where, I'm trying to think of a good example here. A manual link might be something where if you're creating a business profile, like let's say for Yelp, it might go, like let's say you have a Yelp page and you include your own business profile, like the search engine would be able to kind of direct that traffic from Yelp to your page and track that for you. And then manufactured links, those are the ones you're trying to avoid. That's where if I saw a Facebook post, let's say I saw a Facebook post that was doing really well, like I saw a meme that was doing really good on Facebook or Instagram, and I just decided to include my blog link about like how to start a lawn care business on there randomly. Well, Instagram or Facebook, they're going to look at that and say, hey, you're trying to rig the system, where you're trying to like take all of these impressions that this post is getting and you're trying to insert yourself there. They will try to like push down your engagement on that. So will push down that sort of link content there. It's better to try to create content manually yourself, or trying to work with other people. You might work with another website vendor in order to create really good high quality links there. So that way you're getting the results that you've earned. So that's a little bit more about offsite optimization, but more onto popularity metrics and metrics in general. This is also important things to think about. You want to think about the quantity of links that track back to your website as well as the quality. So again, it all kind of boils back to the HTML that you have on your site and the CSS elements, that making sure that it's really keeping people on the page and it's giving them the information that they need. Content is that anchor text, is the information that they're getting that's really of value to them. Relationships is link neighborhood. So you could work, like let's say I'm with Christian's example, the lawn care business, that I'm also working with a pool, let's say like a small pool company business that's also trying to help individuals learn more about pool care. We might create a blog post together and we might link to each other's websites. So that's kind of building that link neighborhood of content there, as well as recency. Those are other things that the search engine tends to look for. These are all things that search engines tend to look for, and they kind of measure through their algorithms. So if it's more fresh content, then it might be more relevant. If the content that you create now might be different than 5 years ago, if you're trying to consult like a landscaping business. So it's important to kind of update your content as necessary and maybe get rid of old links that aren't as relevant as they were before. Then you want to have a variety of links as well, so making sure that you're generating enough content that appeals to different types of users who'll be able to find your page. And then word of mouth, having the opportunity to have your links shared either through social media, Twitter, Instagram, etc., where people are able to really find and interact with that content. And ultimately, once you share it on social media, the goal is to get them to visit your website and hopefully convert to your business. It's all about that marketing funnel. So a few common digital marketing metrics. So these are things, if you're taking digital media marketing, you'll see these a lot, but a session is essentially the time that a user spends on your web page without leaving. So usually they define this as long as the user is on that page for about 30 minutes with full activity, then it counts as a full session. But let's say I leave like within 15 minutes, or if I don't interact at all on the website, then that does not count as a full session most of the time. So it's very important that you're creating content that's going to get people to engage with your website. Bounce rate, those are looking at the people who, let's say they do visit that page, but then they immediately leave right after. If the content that you're creating doesn't match what the user is looking for, your bounce rate is going to increase. They're going to bounce away from your page in a sense, and they're going to lead to find content that does match what they're looking for. So it's important to create content that, you know, immediately captures their eyes, that keeps them on the page, and that they're going to find useful. And then click-through rate, that's the number of individuals who are clicking on your ad, or if you're using paid media or paid search results, the people who are clicking on your ad versus the amount of times that that ad or that paid media is displayed, or impressions. So here's an example of that. So let's say I'm on Instagram. If I'm a digital media marketer and I'm working for a juice truck, you know, I'm hoping that individuals are clicking on this link a lot to increase our click-through rate. So hopefully they will end up converting. Let's say I notice that there's a very high bounce rate. If I'm using paid media, I'm going to get a lot of sessions, people who are going to like starting to view this content. But if there's a very high bounce rate in between that, that means that the content on the page that this links to isn't as good, or it might not match what they're looking for. So here we're talking about the Black Friday sale. If it's content that is useful to the user, it would lead them to a page that shows them how they can take advantage of like this 15% off. But let's say it's just when they click on this link, it just takes them to my homepage. That's not the content that they're looking for. They want to know how to get this deal. So you have to make sure that what you're advertising is consistent and congruent with what you're selling. So that's pretty much about it for me there, but we wanted to share a little bit more about free tools and resources. On my end, if you're interested in learning a little bit more about HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, I definitely recommend checking out Free Code Camp. It's a great resource. The hard part about learning the code is like it's something you have to like do manually before you learn how to get a real like grasp of it. So if you're able to like work on it at least once, a little bit, like maybe 15 minutes every day, you're going to start getting a lot more comfortable. So highly recommend that, and also recommend checking out LinkedIn Learning's Essential training course on HTML. Christian, do you want to talk a little bit more about your resources?
Yeah, totally. So if you want to have more of a general understanding, kind of like what this presentation was, but with just more detail, I totally recommend the Beginner's Guide to SEO on Moz.com. When we had Caitlin study here a couple months ago, she recommended this, and this has like allowed me to understand the conversations around SEO. The next aspect of it is the SEO Foundations LinkedIn Learning. Also a very good tool, and they're not that. I think the SEO Foundations is about an hour long. The Beginner's Guide to SEO is also pretty short, and you can kind of read one chapter of the Beginner's Guide to SEO and then watch one short little module of the SEO Foundations on LinkedIn Learning, and they go hand in hand. So you're reading and then also seeing the visual aspect of it, which is pretty cool. For keyword research, I recommend the Moz Keyword Explorer. This requires you to make an account, but the account is absolutely free. You can also use Google Keyword Planner. Google has a bunch of tools for SEO and stuff. So like you want to rank on their platform, so you want to use their tools as well. And then you also have something that's called Answer the Public. And this is also very interesting. You type in a keyword or a phrase, and it gives you related keywords or phrase, and it makes it very visual and interactive. So those would be the resources that I would recommend.
Perfect. And I believe after that, thank you guys so much for viewing this presentation today. We hope you found this very useful. If you're interested in learning more about digital marketing or connecting with us, we highly recommend checking out our website, amaucf.com. And just for more great tips and to stay up to date with our events, feel free to check out our social media page at AMAUCF on Instagram. Thank you so much and have a great night, y'all. Bye.